Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Friday, August 30th, 2024. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a bit about my co-host. Do you know, folks, that today is National Beach Day? And because my co-host always subscribes to safety first, she has 3 rules. 1, swim with a lifeguard present and only in designated areas. 2, go with a buddy, never swim alone. And 3, if you happen to be in the area of Wasaga, please don't defecate on the beach. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing, Sheila, and happy National Beach Day?
Do you know, I'm surprised that you didn't mention my one rule above all else. Modesty is the best policy. You know, when you're at the beach, I don't want to see your butt cheeks or anything like that.
Oh, but I do.
No, I know you do. I'm surprised that you did not mention that today is also Frankenstein Day.
No.
Which, yes, it's Frankenstein Day, which I believe is just another day to celebrate the men who pretend to be women, who Frankenstein their bodies surgically to fight women and worm their way into our spaces.
Unbelievable. I wish I had noticed that. And especially now that Tim Walz is running for vice president. And aren't there some people behind the scenes? Their names sound like Frankenstein. Do you know who I'm talking about, Sheila?
Krasensteins? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Let's get into the news of the day. So for those of you who don't know, this is Rebel Roundup. It's our twice weekly show. It's a live show, as you can tell, wherein we talk about the news of the day completely unscripted. So you are going to get our off the cuff remarks and sometimes spicy hot takes. But we react together and we react with you, because if you're watching us on YouTube, great. Thank you for toughing it out on that censorship platform. They don't want us there, so it's important that we stay there. However, if you want to get involved in the show, support the work that we're doing completely willingly out of the goodness of your heart, because you care about Rebel News the way I care about Rebel News, might I suggest you wander on over to Rumble. It's a great free speech platform. They don't care about your politics over there, which I think is what you want. You don't want someone who is necessarily on the same side as you. You want the marketplace of ideas so that you can hash out whose ideas are the best. And as you know, I firmly believe that the arc of history and good governance bends towards conservatism. So if you are over on Rumble, thank you for that. On Rumble, they allow you to do a paid chat. It's called a Rumble Rant. If it's over the $5 US minimum, I'm hereby obligating myself, my friend David Menzies, to read your comment on air, address it, provide feedback maybe. And it's a great way to support the work that we do, because as you know, we are completely demonetized over on YouTube. And of course, we'll never take a penny from Justin Trudeau to do the work that we do. Now, before we move on, we should talk about Rebel News Live in Calgary. Do we have an ad for that, or you want me to just talk about it? There it is. So we've got Rebel News Live in Calgary. For those of you who have never been to a Rebel News Live, it's a safe space for dangerous ideas. You'll meet lots of new friends and your favorite Rebel personalities, including myself, my friend David Menzies, and incredible speakers. This year we've got Tamara Leach, we've got Tom Flanagan, Stephen Ellis, who's an MP, April Hutchinson, and we're announcing new speakers all the time. So it's a one-day freedom festival, really, a freedom conference. And we just pack that sausage really tightly full. But if you want even more of an experience, might I suggest you upgrade to the VIP ticket. So there's a special VIP lounge. That's new this year. I'm kind of excited for that. Premium seating and one piece of limited Rebel News Live merch and a dinner with Rebel News journalists and our special guests. So we have not yet announced the location. but it is in Southeast Calgary. If I breezed through these details a little bit too fast, go to rebelnewslive.com. You'll get all the details. You'll see the list of speakers. Keep checking back because we're adding more all the time. And I think we're adding a really big one. I'm hinting at that one, a really exciting one that you will want to hear from. So tickets and details, rebelnewslive.com.
And Sheila, speaking of Calgary, and I know this wasn't on the our notes, but I have to weigh in on this because this is indeed the number one trending topic as we speak on Twitter, or X, as I should say. Johnny Gaudreau, aka Johnny Hockey, who began his NHL career with Calgary, more recently with the Columbus Blue Jackets. He and his younger brother Matthew were killed last night by what appears to be a drunk driver. Now, granted, the trial hasn't happened, but the evidence so far is damning. The person behind the Jeep that plowed into them while they were on their bicycles, Sean Higgins, he was seen drinking either 5 or 6 beers at the bar before getting into his SUV. He did fill the breathalyzer, as I mentioned. Here's the deal. Yeah, it's a tragedy. But as always, with impaired driving, I am so mortified at how little we take this for the seriousness it is in terms of penalization. I think, Sheila, if you kill someone while impaired behind the wheel, you should be charged with second-degree murder, okay? We have people that commit vehicle homicide while they're impaired, and maybe they, especially in Canada, maybe you'll do months, maybe a couple of years. That's it. Yeah, and I'm looking at you, Marco Muzo, who wiped out a great percentage of that young family many years ago on Kirby Road in York Region here in Canada. Sheila, the apologists say, what do you mean murder? He didn't go behind the wheel intending to kill anyone, and that might be true. But here's my analogy, and I want to get your take. What if I went behind the wheel of my car and I had an automatic rifle, a machine gun? And you know what, Sheila? I just wanted to cruise the boulevard and shoot my gun off. I'm not aiming at anyone. I'm not intending to kill anyone. And then I find out, oh, Mr. Menzies, you know what? A couple of those bullets, they hit 2 pedestrians. They're dead. Am I to say, well, it's not my fault. They got in the way of the bullets. To me, there is no difference, Sheila, than getting loaded and getting behind the wheel of a car and randomly shooting a gun out the window of that car. What say you?
I mean, I think we all know what drunk driving does. And it's pretty heartbreaking that Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew were in New Jersey for their sister's wedding.
Yes.
That's heartbreaking.
It's unbelievable.
This will devastate this family forever. And we don't take drunk driving seriously enough in this country. I was just pulling up some articles about, what were the longest terms for drunk driving. And I dug up the story of Terrence Lee Noggle. He was a 62-year-old Nova Scotia man described by prosecutors as truly the worst of impaired drivers in this country. He was sentenced to 15 years in 2020 for 8 recent charges, and he did die behind bars because he had lung cancer. He had 71 prior convictions.
Unbelievable.
And he finally only got 15 years. And
by the way, Sheila, if he was still alive today, there is no way in hell he is serving those 15 years. I can guarantee you at least a third will be shaved off, especially if it's good behavior.
He was caught impaired driving 3 times in 7 months alone. He they say here he was driving a vehicle in July 2019 that hit a car stopped for a pedestrian. So by the grace of God, he didn't clean out that pedestrian at a crosswalk. He was high on clonazepam at that time. Then in October 2019, he ran a red light and nearly hit a military vehicle. He gave the RCMP officer a false name and arrest. He had multiple drugs in his system, including cocaine, hydromorphone, and his favorite, clonazepam. In February 2020, a motorist saw Noggle driving erratically on Highway 107, followed him to a parking lot. He was impaired with illicit and prescription drugs, driving a stolen car in which he had more than 80 grams of cocaine, an electronic scale, and plastic baggies. This guy was a one-man crime spree. His previous record included more than 20 convictions related to impaired driving, including a 2010 conviction for 8.5 years for impaired driving while disqualified, and of course, leaving the scene of a crash. And only then, after 20 prior convictions and 8 years previously sentenced, and that guy is driving high and drunk every single day. He was just caught 3 times in 7 months, and only then did he get 15 years. We do not take it serious enough. It's like shooting a loaded weapon out of a vehicle.
Well, that is the worst of the worst. And Sheila, as I said off the hop, I want to see death by drunk driver. I want to see that person charged with at least second-degree murder. And in regard to that individual whose resume you just went through, I know it's a very high benchmark in Canada to be declared a dangerous offender. But Sheila, that, if I'm the judge, that meets the benchmark. You are a serial drunk driver and using illegal and legal narcotics to get in a state of impairment. And like you said, you're only talking about the times he got caught. How many times was
every day, I bet.
Yeah. So
every day.
You are indefinitely behind bars until we can be absolutely assured you have been rehabilitated. You're cold turkey. I don't know why, when it comes even to our liberal friends who are hug a thug, why these people get so many second chances. I mean, they're not second chances. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth,
21?
7, 8 chances. Goes
21?
on and on.
Well, and there's this, as much as I hate to say this, silver lining in this is that this happened in the United States and not in Canada. So there is a good chance that this guy will serve some serious time behind bars, because I think they do take it generally a lot more seriously than we do in Canada.
And Sheila, one other thing I want to add. Any of the so-called excuses to justify impaired driving, such as, you look at New Year's Eve, Halloween night, people say, in the past, it was impossible to get a cab. I didn't want to drink and drive. I called the taxi line. I don't even finish the number and it's already a busy signal. Now we have ride sharing, right?
Yeah.
Now you can take an Uber, take a Lyft, what have you. And really, do you want to gamble with somebody's life?
Yeah.
Isn't that $25 Uber ride to know that you are not potentially going to murder someone? Yeah, that's right. I said it, murder someone. Isn't that worth it? I mean, that's 2 or 3 drinks, I would imagine that price. But no, there are these self-entitled thugs that somehow think they can get away with it. And I'll tell you, if we went to Mr. Higgins right now and we said, if you could go back in time 24 hours and choose to either get a taxi or a ride share to your house and leave your Jeep in the bar's parking lot, would you do it? And 1,000%, I'm sure it would be yes. And if it's not yes, then you really got to lock this guy up for being absolutely insane. So I think, for the Goodrow family, for fans of Johnny Goodrow and his younger brother, Matthew, who had already retired from hockey, my heart goes out to them. And let's watch this case, Sheila. Let's see if justice is going to prevail. I know it wouldn't prevail in Canada, that's for sure. But this happened in New Jersey. I think it'll be a little tougher. And I'm sorry, even if it's so-called an accidental or non-intentional double homicide, you have to pay a big price. And for me, if I'm the judge, you lose your freedom. And you know what? You're ahead of the game because you caused two people, two young men in the prime of their life to be murdered. So be grateful you're going to, die of old age behind bars. That's how I would look at things if I were a judge. But anyhow, moving on.
Before we entirely move on to the Liberals doing their best to defend their record, I mean, I watched committee this week, so I know just how bad they are, and just the Liberals are not sending us their best to committee. By the way, Mark Garrettson, he's a real piece of work, that guy. But we've got a message from our friends at Rumble who have a brand new service, which I'm excited to take advantage of. So when Rumble first started in 2013, they built a platform for the small creator. This is what I love about Rumble. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. As you know, if you watch us on YouTube, you're not getting the full story from Rebel News. Facebook actually just admitted they felt a pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. And I should tell you, Facebook also fell to pressure from the Trudeau government too. I've got access to information documents that show the Trudeau Liberals complaining to Facebook and Facebook complying, just taking down users' posts. And old Twitter, not new X, they did it too. Rumble did not, however, do any of those things. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They are attacked in corporate media. They are attacked by governments like France. They are attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers. They don't get much of it. Watching our show right now on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium and use the promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and you believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we are just happy if you watch us on Rumble. Let your dollars do the talking.
And Sheila, on that note, if I may, given Rumble's success, they're going from one victory to the next. Given the success of X since being purchased by Elon Musk, it's amazing who's having a come to Jesus moment regarding freedom of speech. And I talked about earlier this week when Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, aka Facebook, said basically the devil made me do it, i.e. the Biden administration made me censor people during the COVID era. And now why would that be? Could it be, Sheila, that Zuckerberg realizes that maybe regime change in less than 90 days is in the offing, that Donald Trump will be coming in and suddenly he wants to play nice and be less censorious and more free speech friendly? Could that be it, or am I just being too much of a cynic here, Sheila?
Yeah, I think it is completely about money. I think he sees the tides are turning in the United States. Trump is a serious contender again for the presidency, and I don't think he's going to screw around because Facebook got into the censorship business to censor the likes of Trump, and they're scared. They're shaking in their boots, and I don't think their change of heart is sincere. I don't believe that they believe in the First Amendment. They are scared of the potential for a Donald Trump presidency and what he will do to them, rightfully.
Yeah, and And also being a businessman, he sees emerging competitors like X,
Sure.
like Rumble, and he realizes he better go with the flow in terms of being free speech friendly, because obviously that's what a critical mass of people want. Well, you know what, folks, I got to tell you, you know why I love Sheila Gunn Reid? It's because she will sacrifice hours of her life that she will never get back watching committee hearings. And as she alluded to, the Liberals were trying to defend their record, which to me is kind of like the captain of the Titanic trying to defend his record. You know, yeah, I know it was an iceberg, but I wanted to set a record going from England to New York. So what could go wrong? I was told it was an unsinkable ship. Don't blame me. Anyways, why don't we throw to a video? Immigration Minister Mark Miller.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
So let's set this up. Mark Miller isn't a complete idiot. His change of heart is also not sincere. He sees that Canadian, like, finally, even though we have documents that say the Liberals were being told for years now, your out of control immigration targets are going to cause housing inflation, food inflation, drive wages down, and put pressure on the healthcare system and the social safety net. And they're like, yeah, but we need those people to vote for us. And so they didn't care what happened to you or the immigrants that are already here who are competing in the same marketplace as us. We're not setting these people up for success. And so Mark Miller, who is the immigration minister, has suddenly decided, oh, you know what, we're going to start putting caps on work permits. But the work permit issue is the same as the out of control immigration targets. Those people come here, we compete for the same jobs just the same way as immigrants do. So anyways, he was just asked why the government didn't act sooner, because finally they're acting. Why? Have you seen the polls for the Liberals?
Thank you.
They're going to get smoked. And now they're going to fix the problem they caused. And we're supposed to thank them as saviors. But anyways, Mark Miller is asked why the government didn't act sooner to address the immigration crisis. Mark Miller should actually be asked, why do you think that Canadians even trust you to fix the problem you caused? You're like the arsonist showing up with a bucket of water. Anyway, let's go.
The Canadian press, I remember a number of months ago, reported that your predecessor received a briefing 2 years ago in which it was clearly outlined that both the temporary and permanent stream would have a salient impact on affordability. You didn't do anything. You know, I have to challenge you on that. Like you didn't do anything for at least a year after that. It's like you kind of turned a blind eye. Is there a reason for that?
Well, look, I've read those memos assiduously pretty much every day. We expect the public service to give us pros, cons of what impacts any measure that we take could generate. Those are risks that we take. And I think Canadians should see them and judge us for them. But there are also risks in not taking those decisions and not taking those, plunging into a recession, a real concern that would affect all Canadians. Currently now with rising interest rates, it's obvious that we do have to make a number of adjustments that economists are looking at and expecting us to make in terms of changes. But sort of picking and choosing little things out of memos that you hear from the public service, I don't think is a necessarily helpful exercise. We expect the best advice from public servants. That's advice that was given in a memo, but they've also given us advice of the risks in not taking those measures as well.
And so your assessment at the time was don't take any measures and let affordability become an issue?
Well, not at all. I mean, I think we've acted quite aggressively on affordability. I mean, if we didn't have...
Canadians don't feel that at all.
Well, look, we certainly hear at the doors from Canadians what they're feeling.
I bet you are.
Obviously, Canadians look to governments to be responsible for decisions that have been taken. There's also a risk in not taking those decisions. If we had a labor market that was contracted in a recession, I think if you're looking at revisionist history, we could have gone through 1, even 2 recessions, and I don't think Canadians would have wanted that either.
You know, Sheila, that view of Mark Miller from the side, is it just me, or does that persona remind you of someone? Yeah, I'm thinking of Archie from Riverdale. All that's missing is the X and O marking on the side of his head. But nevertheless, it's funny again, much like Zuckerberg, how people on the left are having these come to Jesus conservative moments
Mugged
rather.
by reality.
Yeah.
Mugged by reality.
Well,
Yeah.
they see it's a sinking ship. October of next year. I know it sounds like an eternity away, it kind of is, but it'll be here before you know it. And suddenly it's a course correction. They're reversing their policies. It's just like Trudeau a few days ago when he was announcing tariffs on Chinese-made EV vehicles. And
very Trumpy. Very Trumpy policy.
Trump, nothing. Lincoln Jay and I earlier this month went to Hamilton for a Poilievre press conference, and this was even some of the numbers were exactly the same. I mean, and you know what? You're to compare it to what's happening in America. Kamala Harris, all of a sudden, she wants to build a wall. All of a sudden, she's not into EV mandates. All of a sudden,
after sponsoring a bill for EV mandates, she sponsored a bill for EV mandates, and now she's like, heck, that's a bad idea. Why would we ever do that?
Yeah, and she's pro-fracking and anti-taxing tips for those in the hospitality industry, even though she was the tie-breaking vote for the Senate to put forth that IRS measurement. And, Sheila, I find it rich when she says, well, over the years, I've had a change of heart. I'm calling bullshit on that. And I'll tell you why. If someone is, say, 19 years old, and by the time they're 40 and they've had some 180s in their political thinking, I accept that, especially when it was Sir Winston Churchill that said, if you're not a liberal when you're 20, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative by the time you're 40, you have no brain. But Kamala Harris supported the opposite of what she's saying right now when she was 55 years old, 4 years ago, right? She is now 59. She's had this quantum leap in 4 years, someone in their late 50s. I'm not buying it. And another thing, Sheila, that really makes me nervous, the Democrats right now, that is an Islamist Marxist party. Yep, I said it. And you don't see the squad screaming about this. You don't see Bernie Sanders screaming about this. And the reason why, I think, is they've been told behind the scenes, no, don't worry. Once we win, Kamala will come back on the reserve. So, this is just stuff to engage the electorate, populist stuff, and then we'll go back to being, all out communists. That's my thinking, Sheila, and we see it happening with the Trudeau Liberals as well.
Yeah, you know what? I'm an evangelizer of the good word of conservatism and small government. And so when we do get some takers, you have to show them some grace. You get some baby conservatives, they're learning how to be a conservative. You have to have a little bit of patience with them. That's not what's happening here. We saw this a lot during COVID. People who were sort of on the left all of a sudden found themselves on the right because they were figuring out what happens when you give government control of all aspects of your life. It's not pretty. And so a lot of those people found themselves on the right, and you have to show them some grace. You can't give them a purity test and say, well, you held these opinions before, so you can't join the club. Well, why the heck are we talking about conservatism then? When we get some takers, we run them off. That is not what's happening here. She's not saying, boy, I got this one wrong. She's never said that. If she said, yeah, I completely got that wrong, and upon further examination and rethinking my worldview, I've come around to your way of thinking. That's not what she's doing. This is completely opportunistic policy flip-flopping a la John Kerry, because she is sensing what the electorate wants. And so she is making herself into that. She's being a political chameleon and not someone who has learned from her past mistakes.
That is the word, chameleon. Just like Sleepy Joe Biden, one of the ultimate political chameleons of all time.
Well, his brain is mush. His brain is mush, so you can put whatever you want in there.
Yeah. But you know what, Sheila? He is still the president. Where is he? I know he's in California, which is the size of a couple of European countries.
Who's in charge these days?
I know. Who's minding the store?
Okay, we've got a really full show. We've got a lot of stuff to get to. And I know we've got some questions in the chats already about what happened in Lethbridge yesterday at the courthouse, because I was in court yesterday covering the sentencing hearing for the remaining Coots 2. And we'll get to that. But first, let's go to Freeland. So I don't know if you guys want me to do my Freeland impression. Maybe I'll do it later.
This is
but
about her touting the liberal gun ban, right, Sheila?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So she's asked about like skyrocketing crime in the GTA, but literally everywhere.
Yeah.
York Regional Police recently announced the region has seen a 92% increase in shootings and 106% increase in carjackings so far in 2024. And the year's not over yet. And what does Freeland say? Well, she is so proud to talk about, as you all know, our moves on gun control in an effort to make Canadians safer. We have banned assault style weapons, military style weapons. No Canadian needs these for hunting. Yeah, we're not allowed to hunt with AR-15s, sister. We already know. But anyway, let's go. Let's
Great
watch
impression.
Toronto and GTA police forces are raising concerns about violent crime, like carjackings and gun crimes, as well as repeat offenders out on bail. York Regional Police highlighted a surge in violent crimes earlier this week. In Durham Region this morning, they told us that 23% of the arrests that are made for a gun crime involves a person already out on bail. And earlier this month, Toronto Police said that gangs operating with a total disregard for the safety and well-being of others. And separately, the Toronto Police Association called for action against 3 officers that were injured earlier this month, arresting a repeat offender. Is the federal government aware of the impact of the violent crime and gun crimes are having on communities, and what will be done about it?
Thanks for the question. Look, violent crime and gun crime are totally intolerable, are totally unacceptable. And very often it is the most vulnerable among us who are the targets of this crime and whose lives are made really miserable, really scary by the prevalence of this crime. And it is absolutely incumbent on all orders of government to be working together to end violent crime. It's incumbent for all police of all jurisdictions to be working together with all levels of government to put an end to this. I do want to highlight, because you've spoken about gun crime, that, you know, one of the things that makes gun crime possible is guns on the streets. And that is why our government is acting so decisively to get guns off the streets in Canada. That's why we have banned military-style assault weapons. Why should people have them? They should not. These make our lives more dangerous. That's why our government has introduced a freeze on handguns. These are policies that make Canadians safe, that make Canadian families safe, that make women and girls and children safe. That is why our government is committed to them. And I do want to point out, the Conservatives have voted against those really obvious elementary measures that we need to make us safer.
Illegal handguns have become all too easy to access with limited consequences for criminals. And almost all of the guns.
So Sheila, by the way, when she says she wants to have a country where women and girls and children are safe, what about men? I guess we don't count.
Okay, just hang on. I find a firearm the great equalizer. What am I supposed to do to please Chrystia Freeland? Engage in hand-to-hand combat with a home invader? No.
Sheila, one thing that is in the federal government's control is stopping these ludicrous revolving door bail situations where you could, I'm not making this up, someone is out on bail right now who tried attempted murder, folks, right? That's how high a benchmark. They could stop this, but they won't. It's their hug a thug. Well, you know, there's societal issues and his mama didn't hug him enough and father wasn't part of the family. I don't care.
Racism.
You know what, Sheila?
David, before you go on, they reduced the sentences the minimum recommended sentences brought in by Stephen Harper on a whole slate of gang-related violence charges due to systemic racism.
Yeah, there's another one. And I'm sorry, I don't want to sound heartless, but I don't care. In fact, Sheila, I subscribe to the point of view. You were found on the streets with an illegal handgun in your possession, 10 years automatic. 10 years, that's it. You know, that would go a way, I think, of ending this problem, as opposed to going after, I don't know, duck hunters in Saskatchewan, for goodness sakes. And by the way, I got to tell you, you know what I'm taking great pleasure with, Sheila, with these so-called proposed gun bans, is Justin Trudeau's inability to recruit enforcers. Cops don't want any part of this. Then remember, he reached out to the post office, and imagine that I come into my local Shoppers Drug Mart with a rifle, and the pimply faced kid behind the counter goes, "Oh, is that loaded, sir?" I mean, it was so ludicrous. And then, of course, the most recent thing, which I'm pleased to report is failing, is recruiting retired RCMP officers to do the dirty work. I heard a great interview with Tony Bernardo. He's the head honcho of the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. And what he said, Sheila, it makes perfect sense. From what they can gather, this is going over like a Led Zeppelin, that law enforcement personnel typically do not want to be in the role of the bad guy. They hate that. No. So the idea of door knocking to legal gun owners and being the heavy and forcing them to turn in their gun, they want no part of that. So that retired RCMP scheme, that's going down in flames too. Who's going to carry out these bans? That's what I want to know, Sheila.
Well, and kudos to the firearms owning community, because the second a company or an organization starts to work with the federal government and says, well, maybe we'll help you, whatever you're going to pay us, it's going to be worth it, the firearms owning community turns on them like a pack of wild dogs and outs them and basically ruins them. So that's the free market at work, and I'm proud to see it. But moreover, to Freeland's point on her decisive actions to get dangerous weapons off the street, like a 410 bird gun because it looked cool with a black plastic stock. They are so dangerous, they've left them in the hands of the owners since May 2020. So even they know that these are not dangerous firearms that need to be immediately confiscated from us, because we still have them. So whatever, Freeland. Whatever, Freeland. Look, as she says, look, we are taking decisive action. Whatever. I find her insufferable.
When it comes to Fraulein Freeland, Sheila, you're like the female Rich Little. That is a spot-on impression. I think you've been watching too much Freeland video today.
Me too. Honest to God, me too. I feel like I've been watching too much Freeland. Let's keep going. York Regional Police announced the region has seen a 92% increase in shootings, 106% increase in carjackings. And lo and behold, it's not people like me who have to call some nerd in a cubicle at the chief firearms office and say, hey, I want to take my gun from the gun safe and go to the range and plink at some targets. It's not me doing this stuff. It's elite people who are unlawfully possessing firearms. And guess where they get those? From the United States. How do they get them? Well, 6 nations, actually. And across Justin Trudeau's porous border. You see, if people can stream across it, surely firearms can stream across it. And that's exactly what's happening. So it's not me or the rest of the lawful firearms owning community. It's gun traffickers, because Justin Trudeau won't tighten up the border. It's be the single number one thing that would address the spate of violent crimes in our major municipalities. But, when you're open borders, consequences be damned, I guess.
And Sheila, there's one other factor which makes it a third rail issue to address. I understand with certain Indian reserves, it's a two-way traffic from the reserve to the U.S. illegal
6
smokes.
nations.
Pardon?
Six
Yeah.
Nations Reserve. That's
Yep.
it's the big problem. That's the big one.
Yep.
Smokes and guns.
Guns coming the other way.
Yep.
But I can tell you, you go to these reserves in Ontario where every single rule under the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, which was ostensibly put in place to prevent minors from gaining access to tobacco, every single rule is broken, including free samples, smoking in the store, selling to minors. I have seen it. I have eyewitnessed this, Sheila, and they will not budge on this. Ontario will say it's a federal bailiwick, and the feds say, no, it's a provincial one. And it's like a circus carousel going round and round, and nothing is done. So that is part of the problem, but you will never see that addressed.
You know, I don't think we need to show this video from the York Regional Police because we just gave the numbers. Let's just to expedite the show a little bit. And I know we've got a message once again from our friends at Rumble that I need to get to. But before I do that, let's talk about what happened at Coots. So
yes,
the conspiracy to commit murder charges that came out of an incident that happened sort of adjacent to the border blockade at Coots in January and February 2022 was used as proof for the necessity of the Emergencies Act, for the illegal invocation of the Emergencies Act, as we've now found out, which we all knew at the time. But even if it were used as the excuse, the cops on the ground dealt with it. Like they had the tools to arrest and deal with that. So you didn't need these extraordinary powers granted to local police by the Emergencies Act. Now, a court challenge has found that the Emergencies Act was unlawfully used against Canadians who are simply protesting for their freedom. You see, when they were protesting against tyranny, they got more tyranny. And so Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who I think is one of the most smug and insufferable Liberal cabinet ministers you will ever have to listen to, he says that even though now those conspiracy to commit murder charges that were levied against 4 men in Coots, Alberta were, the 4 men, 2 pled guilty to lesser charges and the other 2 were acquitted on charges of conspiracy to commit murder. He's still proud of using that, the Emergencies Act on people. He said it was the right decision, even though court told him no. So let's listen.
So the federal government used the arrest of 4 Alberta men charged with conspiracy to killing an RCMP officer just as a justification to break up a protest in Ottawa and in Windsor. These charges now have largely been dropped. So does this undermine the government's reasoning for using the Emergency Act to break up the protest?
Not at all. Not at all. I was an active participant in those conversations around invoking the Emergencies Act. I think Canadians recognize that it was an extraordinary measure of last resort. Justice Rouleau, who reviewed the circumstances, confirmed that. Premier Ford, the Conservative Premier of Ontario, supported the invocation. I think Canadians supported the invocation. It was a time-limited, reasonable, and balanced measure which brought an end to a very dangerous, potentially violent, and economically destructive circumstance. So I'm very proud of that decision the government took. It was the right decision, and the courts and the justice system work independently from the government. But the government, I think, took the only responsible decision at that time, and I'm proud that we did it.
Well, Sheila, the worst thing I can say is that Minister LeBlanc is making the previous minister look pretty solid.
Yeah, you know, the courts have ruled against the federal government, saying that they used it illegally. We have covered these court cases. In fact, in many of the court cases, we have helped the people involved, like Tamara Leach. Relatively minor charges for many of them involved mischief. You didn't need an extraordinary wartime law, which should be reserved for events like 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, used on people having a hot tub party in the nation's capital to try to get the government's attention. By the way, where are you supposed to go to protest the federal government except the city that houses the federal government? They were just a little bit too rambunctious and blue collar for the very boring people who live and work in Ottawa. I think that's a lot of the problem. But where are you supposed to go? Where are you supposed to go to protest the federal government except where the federal government is? Now, with regard to what happened at Coutts, the guys who actually were directly involved in the border blockade, they were brought up on mischief charges. You don't need to use a wartime law to bring them up on mischief charges. Jason Kenney, our premier at the time, did not want the Emergencies Act. He wanted tow trucks that were capable of moving tractors. He knew the federal government had some of those at CFB Edmonton, but the federal government wouldn't give him access to those, which is all that he wanted. There was a sort of a satellite incident, I want to say, that happened at Coutts where 4 men were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, mischief over $5,000, and firearms related offenses. Now, as it turns out, one of those firearms related offenses was a paper offense. He had a handgun, but he didn't have authorization to transport. So that's a paper offense. It's not even like a brandishing or in illegal possession of a firearm. He had an RPAL. He just couldn't have it where it was. He didn't call the nerd and ask for permission, as I mentioned a second ago. So he was unlawfully, it was not in his firearm was not in the place that he said it was going to be, or he didn't ask for permission. And the charges of conspiracy to commit murder were the 2 remaining, Anthony Olenek and Chris Carbert. They were acquitted on those. They've been held for 921 days as of today, I believe, in jail without bail. And it's sort of unusual because given that the most extensive charges they were acquitted of, you think that they would be released pending sentencing. They have not been. I was sat in a sentencing hearing yesterday for the 2. They were convicted of mischief over $5,000 and firearms related offenses, and unlawful possession, basically. And so what I heard yesterday is that the Crown wants 9 years. 9 years in jail. One of them, they would like a lifetime prohibition on firearms, is Chris Carbert, because this is his second sort of firearms related offense. And Anthony Olenek, they want a 10-year prohibition. Whereas the defense said, this could be somewhere in the range of 2.5 to 3.5 years in jail on the high end, which means they should be out with time served, given the fact that you get 1.5 days per day spent in pretrial custody. But I want to tell you just how outrageous the ask from the Crown is. I was digging around for, and the judge said something that sort of put me on like a little bit of a rabbit hole. As I was sitting in the court live tweeting yesterday, and you can see more of that from truckertrials.com. But I was Googling who the judge was, and I realized he's the judge, or he was the prosecutor. He was appointed to the bench in 2018, but he was the prosecutor from the Mayor Thorpe Mountie killings in the early 2000s. He was the prosecutor there. And he said something to the Crown, and he said, "Are you expecting me to sentence these men on charges they are not convicted of, as in conspiracy to commit murder of Mounties, for a firefight that never happened?" Because there was no firefight with the cops. Like one of them had a lot of bravado, and he was talking to undercover cops about wanting to go to war. But Chris Carbert, he came out and surrendered himself peacefully immediately to the RCMP ERT team. There was no firefight, even when they had an opportunity to have one. And I thought, well, who's this judge who's talking about this stuff? He was the Crown prosecutor in Mayerthorpe, where 4 Mounties were killed by James Roscoe. James Roscoe, who was a walking crime spree, should not have been out. And the fact that he was out was an indictment of our justice system. the two men who were the two remaining, they didn't really do anything except give him the gun that was used. Dennis Cheeseman and Sean Hennessy. For just to put it into context, 4 cops are dead in that case. The 2 that pled guilty to manslaughter because they saw the writing on the wall and the public wanted blood, they got 7.5 years and 10 years respectively. The Crown wants 9 years for people who didn't kill cops. Not a shot was fired. And the one guy turned himself in completely peacefully. The other guy was sort of arrested when he was oot in a boot, as they say. I can't even believe what I was seeing in there. I couldn't believe that these guys are still held without bail, not even, and they will likely be sentenced to time served. Why aren't they out? Why? But no, sentencing was just put over now until September 9th.
And you know, Sheila, when you were speaking earlier, we were showing some B-roll footage of the Coots demonstrators, and I couldn't help but notice the dichotomy between what we saw then and what we see today in the streets of our great Dominion. You see these, you see a flag you see a sea of Canadian and Alberta flags. You see them singing the national anthem, removing their headgear as they do so. Compare that to chants for genocide in the streets, physical violence, vandalism and firebombing of Jewish-owned businesses, schools, synagogues, etc. And the cops do nothing. No, correction. The cops will sometimes bring you Timbits and coffee. It is unbelievable. I know I'm off on a bit of a tangerine here, but you know, is it any more apparent the 2-tier policing and politics that we have in our country today?
I saw it firsthand yesterday in Lethbridge. You know, if you are a routine sex offender, if you are a drug trafficker, so someone who poisons the young people of our community and gets financially wealthy doing it, you can be in and out of jail. Lucky if you see the inside of a jail cell. These guys were convicted of minor gun crimes and acquitted of the worst of them, and mischief over $5,000. The one guy had sole custody of his son since the little guy was 9 months old. He's scarcely seen him these past 3 years. Like, this is unnecessary. It's cruel at this point. They may have said some, and I think one, not the other, said some, I think, not so great things to undercover cops, female undercover cops, as guys talking themselves up to women sometimes do. But like, enough is enough. It's gone on too long. These guys should have been at least released on bail pending sentencing, and they haven't even done that. I can't, it's appalling when you see similar sentences. But I know we have to hit an ad break.
Oh, and if I may add, Sheila, I know from our conversation yesterday, it's going to go on a little longer, at least for another 2 weeks. They're in the cooler.
Till the
night. I guess if you've been in jail for hundreds of days, what's another 2 weeks? Disgraceful.
Yeah, almost 4 years in jail once you get credit for time served. Almost 4 years. And they, like I said, they want sentences in one case more, like, higher than a manslaughter conviction.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. All right. We've got a quick ad break here. And then we'll go into, we've got a Rebel ad, a message from our friends at Rumble, and then we got to get back into the news because, oh my goodness, David Menzies is 5 to 12 my time. Have we just been talking for an hour?
1:55 real time here at the center of the universe. So yes, time flies when you're having fun. Are we having fun?
I feel like I've been abducted by aliens. I feel like I'm missing time. Okay, let's get into this. Rumble is from Rumble Store. Rumble.store. Rumble's exclusive apparel has finally arrived. They're now offering 20% off all purchases in the Rumble Store with the discount code DROP20. If you want to support the brand that is fighting for free speech and fighting for our First Amendment and free speech here in Canada, This is the best way to do it. They have tees, sweaters, hats, plus much more. Go to rumble.store. Make sure to enter DROP20 as a promo code to get 20% off your order. Good grief. Where should we go next? David Menzies, I'll let you choose.
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
Oh,
by...
sorry. I'm rushing through because all of a sudden I looked at the clock, but I know we have to hit a Rebel News ad here. I'm sure of it.
Okay. Wow, that looks like a humdinger of a show. Did I see one of the exhibitors, the Canadian Armed Forces, Sheila? I mean, actually showing up at a toxic masculinity kind of gun show as opposed to, I don't know, recruiting at the Trans March?
There's a crisis of recruitment and attrition in the Canadian Armed Forces. And it is obvious why. But I should tell everybody what they just saw there. That's TACCOM 2024. That's Canada's largest gun show. It's coming to the International Centre in beautiful downtown Mississauga, Ontario from September 6th to 8th. I wish I was there so much and just watching money fly out of my wallet. The event is dedicated to showcasing the best in tactical and competitive shooting disciplines. You get to see top manufacturers and distributors from Canada, the USA, and Europe. And they're showcasing their latest products, training, and insights. A new feature this year is the cash and carry deals on firearms and ammunition, allowing visitors to purchase directly at the show, provided they have a valid Canadian firearms license. For tickets, go to taccomcanada.com. All right.
And I got to drop by the International Center, Sheila, especially since the last time super producer Efren Monsanto and I went, I was dressed as a cat. But that's another story. Anyway, I think the thing that intrigues me is Guilbeault's electric car fantasy. Canadians face billions in new costs. And, you know, this is Stephen Guilbeault, who was once very fashionable in a orange prison jumpsuit. There's a couple of characters like that in the Justin Trudeau cabinet. But, you know, Sheila, what I'm getting at, maybe super producer Efren can find this. Can these Trudeau Liberals, when it comes to the EV fantasy, and I think it is a fantasy, despite the fact that we're gambling tens of billions of dollars of our money on EV plants, EV battery plants, etc. Can they at least
get a haircut?
Pardon?
Did Guilbeault just get a haircut? Is he not doing that horrible bowl cut thing that he used to do?
But you know,
he's
Sheila,
still got his Harry Potter glasses. He looked like sinister green Harry Potter before. Someone has helped him with that, but you know, honestly, I got to give him credit. His hair looks good here. Just leave it like that.
But the point I was getting at, whether it's Stephen Guilbeault or Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, when they come to, you know, singing poetically how great electrical vehicles are, could they at least, I don't know, Sheila, call me a crank, call me a lunatic. Could they at least lead by example and drive one? And when you see the Prime Minister's 8-car motorcade, it is typically 8-cylinder, fossil fuel burning, extra large Chevy Suburbans and Ford Expeditions. And when Lincoln Jay and I earlier this year caught up with Minister Guilbeault in Peterborough, you know, when we walked with him to his vehicle, because that was my prime directive, as much as he's going on and on and on about green initiatives, I really want to know how he got to Peterborough, what vehicle. And Sheila, when I asked him about that, classical liberal cabinet minister changed the channel. He said words to the effect of, you know, often I take the train from Montreal to Quebec City. And I said, okay, fair enough. How'd you get to Peterborough, Minister? Right. And when we got to that car, lo and behold, it was a Toyota RAV4, a smaller SUV. And Guibault tried to pull a fast one on me. I think we have some of the footage. Maybe I'll stop talking and let the footage tell the tale. Here we go. Maybe.
When possible, and to use.
Today, sir, to this residential neighborhood.
So what I'm saying is that I try to modulate my transportation as possible, to use active transportation when it's possible, use public transit when possible, and to use a car. And as you probably know, my service vehicle as Environment and Climate Change Minister is a fully electric vehicle.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in Peterborough, Ontario. And folks, I guess. Oh, but not that day. Maybe because getting to Peterborough from Quebec, that was out of range. And God forbid a Liberal cabinet minister suffers from range anxiety. That's what they want us to suffer from. But the point is, Sheila, we got to the Toyota RAV4. And Guibault thought he could pull a fast one on me because I was asking him about this being a fossil fuel vehicle. And he jumped out and he pointed at the hybrid logo. And the thing is, I know a thing or two about cars. I covered the car industry for a couple of decades once upon a time. And I said to Mr. Guibault, but that's not a plug-in hybrid. Big difference, because in Ontario, you do not qualify for the green plate unless it's a plug-in hybrid. In other words, if it's just a garden variety hybrid like Guibault was in, that is not considered a car worthy of a green plate. To which the minister responded by hopping into that RAV4 and getting out of Dodge. So I'm just saying, Sheila, I can't understand, just for the PR value, can these people not get around? And I don't mean for Photoshop things. Like he said, his daily driver is a full EV. But when it comes to getting around, can't they get around in an EV or at least a plug-in hybrid? And I guess the answer is no. They really dig those fossil fuels, don't they?
Well, especially when somebody else is buying, like electric vehicles are expensive and unreliable. But the taxpayers foot in the bill for these people. And even still, because I have done this in the past, I've pulled the records by ministry about what they have for electric vehicles and what they don't, and the ministerial cars, and because they get their own personal car paid for plus a driver in the ministerial limos or town cars or whatever they're driving. And almost none of them are electric. Yep. In fact, Catherine McKenna drives a Subaru Cross. She drives a Subaru Crosstrek, which is, I think that's a good, reliable car. I wouldn't mind one, but hers is not an electric vehicle, even hers. So I don't know. These people, they can't even practice what they preach. But the moral of the story is with Guilbeault's targets here, the Parliamentary Budget Office basically said that if you dream to achieve these targets of fully electric vehicles being the only vehicles sold by, I think, 2035, a couple things have to happen, and all of them are bad for Canadians. Disincentives. So putting a tariff on fossil fuel powered vehicles, government subsidies for electric cars, which we already do, or increases in the fuel tax, which would, it's just either you tax the vehicle or you tax the fuel. And anyways, these are all just things that make life more expensive because somebody will have to pay for those subsidies for the novelty cars of rich people. And that'll be squarely on the back of Canadian taxpayers.
And going back to the former Minister McKenna, if you had to drive a Subaru, Sheila, there's only one. And it's the WRX in the STI trim with a stick shift.
No, it's the Brat.
Or your Brat. I will never forgive you for selling that brat because if I
Price
ever
was
come
right.
into Lotto Max FU money, I will search the world for a good condition Subaru brat. And you have to admire Subaru for getting around the high truck tariffs. That's why they mounted 2 seats in the pickup bed so it would qualify as a car.
And they were like church basement chairs. They weren't they weren't even nice. They were just plastic church basement chairs with no legs, basically, in the back seat. They were not all that nice. But we need to hit all the stuff that was in the Rumble headline.
Okay.
And so we need to go quickly now. Quickly.
Why, is that some sort of rule, by the way? We have to.
Because you don't get the emails. I get the emails. And I get enough emails complaining about me during the day that I don't need any extra. So we want to make sure that we are not false advertising the show to people.
Oh,
so
okay.
Right? We don't want to be misinformation. So let's go to Poilievre calling out the Liberals. I think it's on immigration.
We have a video.
Yeah, but he's blasting the Liberals on their immigration failures, please.
Expensive Liberal retreat in Halifax, we learned that nothing will change. That Chrystia Freeland, who's been Canada's worst ever finance minister, helping to double our national debt and drive inflation to its worst in 4 decades, will stay in her job. Sean Fraser, who destroyed what was the best immigration system in the world, will stay in his job. The crazy carbon tax minister, Stéphane Guilbeault, who wants to ban trucks, roads, and plastic straws while Liberals legalize crack and heroin, he's going to keep his job as well. The disastrous justice minister, who's helped give Canada a 50% increase in violent crime and a 120% increase in gun crime, he will keep his job. But most important of all, Justin Trudeau, the man who is not worth the cost, announced that he will keep his job. Canadians cannot afford another painful, costly, chaotic, and corrupt year of Justin Trudeau. He will not quit. He must be fired. His ego, arrogance, and incompetence will always have him putting himself ahead of Canadians. He would rather Justin Trudeau would rather force an entire generation to go without homes, 2 million people to go to food banks, 25% of kids to go to school hungry, that he would rather that continue to be the case than to give up power. He will not quit. He must be fired. And the person to do it is Jagmeet Singh.
And you know what, Sheila? I think that is a brilliant communication strategy. The Liberals are dead in the water. We know that. That's why you see Pierre Poilievre turning his sights to Jagmeet Singh. This is a party and a leader holding the country hostage. I never thought I would say this. I literally have more contempt for Jagmeet Singh than I do for Justin Trudeau, Sheila, because as Pierre Poilievre calls him, and I love this nickname, I think it's going to stick, Sell Out Singh. Jagmeet Singh is selling out this country, his party, the union movement, everything for what? For his $2 million plus pension, as long as he gets past the finish line of February 2025. Because those Armani suits and those Rolex watches and those BMW M3s, by the way, not an electric car either, folks, they're very, very expensive. He has lavish tastes, and that's what this is all about. As Poilievre said, with all those people going to the food bank, with 25% of Canadian kids going hungry to school, this is all being done. This is all being facilitated by the NDP propping up the Liberals so that Jagmeet Singh, the champagne socialist, can maintain his pricey lifestyle. It is despicable. He should be ashamed of himself.
Yeah, champagne sellout. That's what he is. So I don't even think he's a socialist. He's just an idiot. And he is selling out Canadians. He doesn't care what happens to us as long as he gets his pension. From us, by the way. So he doesn't care how many of us lose our jobs. No. He doesn't care how many of us lose our homes. He doesn't care how many of us are forced to go to the food bank, as long as he gets his at the end of the day.
Yep.
And I don't think his ideology is socialism. I think his ideology is entitlement, which I suppose socialism sort of goes hand in hand with that, you know, because you want what other people have without having to work for it. But I think, you know, and this is the closest to the levers of power that he will ever be, in that he controls Justin Trudeau's fate. And Justin Trudeau knows it. And the between the two of them, one thinks it's his hereditary right to be the leader of this country. And the other one thinks that it's his right to extract an unearned pension from us, and the fate of the country be damned, as long as they get what they think they're entitled to their entitlements, as somebody once said.
You know, I would love to speak to diehard NDP voters.
Yeah.
Heart-to-heart conversation, off the record. Is this the party that you still support? Is this the leader you want? Off the record, just give it to me straight. I can't imagine it is, Sheila. You know,
yeah, he's no Ed Broadbent, that's for dang sure.
No Tom Mulcair, who actually brought the party to official opposition status, which I swear I never thought I would see in my lifetime. Never. And my goodness, if you voted against Mulcair for this guy, you must be suffering big time buyer's remorse.
I don't know. I don't know if they are, because I think the NDP party, Tom Mulcair sort of kept them at bay. The crazy people, the Hamas worshippers, the trans cats of the world. He sort of kept them at bay and was the grown up in the room. Once he was gone, I think they just took over the party the same way they took over the Democrat Party. So I don't know if they have buyer's remorse. I think that they're like, we'll just keep doing this until somebody figures out how great we are and Jagmeet Singh is. I think maybe some of the old like cat hair bra burners of the 60s, they might have buyer's remorse, but I don't think the youngsters do.
Well, the youngsters, more and more, we see by the polling data, are coming over to the Conservative Party.
Right.
You know, that is one
cost
of the biggest
living. Yeah.
Profound changes. But Sheila, I would argue you've gone from a decade ago official opposition status to what's going to happen in the next election, which at best it'll be the status quo, right? Probably you're going to lose a couple of seats. That makes you an irrelevant third place party in my books, period. So I don't see the how you can portray this as a winning strategy, how you can convey this as a victory. I just don't. It is just right down the hill.
Efron, we'll go to our Rebel News ad break after this, and then we'll go to the ISIS Butchers Committee hearing after that, and then we'll tidy up the loose ends in the chats for the show. But what I have to say about this is that Jagmeet Singh is so inept that he has neutralized the NDP as sort of the power brokers of the Canadian Parliament, in that in previous iterations of Conservative governance, you needed a strong NDP, not because you needed to cooperate with them, but because you needed them to split the progressive left. The right rounded up all to the Conservative Party. It always coalesced around the Conservative Party or the Conservative and Reform in previous years. But since the Conservative Party, as we know it now, formed, all the votes on the right coalesced around that, and so you needed a fracture on the left to gain power. The NDP is so bad, and I think to his credit, Pierre Poilievre is so good at speaking to young people on the issues that matter to them, like affordability, that the Conservatives are going to smoke the daylights out of the Liberals without a strong NDP.
Yeah.
The NDP is collapsing on itself like a dying star. So are the Liberals, and the Conservatives are going to win without a powerful NDP, a powerful, like Thomas Mulcair, being a socialist, but also not a complete insane person, was why we had Stephen Harper for so long.
Yeah.
And Poilievre is going to do it without a sane person running the NDP, which is really an accomplishment and a criticism of just how terrible Jagmeet Singh is.
And one last point on that, in terms of sellout Singh, he has sold out his party's platform to the Liberals. The Liberals have cherry-picked the strongest points of an NDP platform, such as universal dental care, but they've bastardized those ideas so that universal dental care isn't really universal dental care. Who's going to qualify for that is a tiny, finite number of Canadians. So if I'm the NDP Brain Trust, I'm kind of feeling like Dr. Frankenstein right now. What have I created here? What have I done?
Yeah, it's true. And Justin Trudeau, to his credit, and which pains me to say that, I feel like I should have a antacid after saying it, he outflanked the NDP on the left. Like, he just went and gobbled up all their ideas. Yeah. And, you know, far left environmentalism, socialism, EV bail, like all the stuff that the NDP were all about. He just was like, okay, I'll do that, and I'll take your voters too. So that's what happened. Let's hit this ad break for our friends from Canadians for Truth, please.
When the panel said, listen, give it to 6-month-old babies with zero assurances this possibly would be safe, I said, where were you the day when the WHO came out and said, do not use remdesivir in the hospital? I'm Dr. Peter McCullough. Join me for an evening together. Tickets are on sale now.
That looks like a good show.
It's going to be a great show. I saw a very similar show in Red Deer earlier in the year. So they're taking their show on the road, though. So you lucky Ontarians, you get a full day event. It'll take place at Canada Christian College in Whitby and features speeches and a Q&A with Dr. Peter McCullough and special guests Dr. Mark Trozzi and Regina Wattiel. Also, NHL legend Theo Fleury, much shorter than you would think, and Canadian business magnate Joseph Bourgault will be in attendance to host the event. So go to canadiansfortruth.ca/events to get your tickets today.
And speaking of the WHO, Sheila, where are we on the monkeypox, aka Mpox file? You know, and by the way, I think I might have mentioned this on a previous show. It's uncanny how these global pandemics follow a 4-year cycle directly attached to an upcoming U.S. federal election, isn't it?
And just like COVID, they are not telling you who is going to get sick from this. Like COVID, they didn't tell you that it was the elderly and the people with lifestyle-related comorbidities, like morbid obesity. They're not telling you who's going to actually get monkeypox, and it is not heterosexual folks minding their own business and keeping it in their pants, if you know what I mean. They're not telling you it's an STD that affects gay people.
You know, and on terrestrial radio, I heard an interview with one of the, I think it's the Peel Region Public Health Officer, Bigosh. He's the guy that did that horrible video with Brampton Batman urging kids to get the COVID injections. And there was such an outcry that thankfully it was pulled. But it was very comical, Sheila, because he was talking, when they talked about who is most susceptible to this, he said, and this is the first time I've heard this phrase, it's the men having sex with men community. And I'm going, men having, that would be homosexuals, I guess bisexuals too. When did that become the men having sex with men community, Sheila?
What even is a man? Right? Like we don't even know anymore. Yeah, it's just they want to scare you, so they won't tell you. They want to scare you into obedience and control, so they won't tell you that if you are not in this very narrow demographic, you're going to be perfectly fine. And they don't, just like COVID, which was the Wuhan coronavirus, they've gone from monkeypox to mpox because we don't want any stigma. Once you figure out what this is all about, they're like, no, wait, we have to like make it vague and scary again. Okay, one more thing before we go. I know we're way over, and I'm sure Efron is like, Sheila, David, you need this. We need the studio. Let's just show this because it is in the YouTube headline and the Rumble headline. Just a little snippet of Larry Brock, Conservative Party, Larry Brock, at the SECU committee. So that is the Security and Public Safety Committee. They were questioning CBSA and CSIS officials about how in the heck an ISIS terrorist came to not only be in Canada, but get his Canadian citizenship. And as the timeline goes, we're learning more and more. He initially, okay, so dial back. In 2015, he's on an ISIS video in the summer of 2015, ISIS video, hacking a crucified prisoner. We don't know if he was living or dead when they hacked at him, but hacking him to pieces. The man, Ahmed Mustafa LDD. 2017, he applies to come to Canada on a visitor's visa. He's declined. By 2018, he's coming to Canada on a visitor's visa. He comes on a visitor's visa. While he's here, he applies for a work permit and permanent residency. Who knew you could do that? So he came here under false pretenses, but got the benefit of it. Then he is granted a work permit, gets permanent residency, even though he came here with other motives and was previously declined a visitor's visa. By the May, I think, of 2024, he becomes a Canadian citizen. And by July, he's plotting to kill Toronto Jews. And we would not have known if not for French officials. And what are these CBSA officials and CSIS officials saying at committee? The system worked. Whose system? Not ours. Maybe the French. The French system worked okay for us. But Larry Brock, who was a former Crown prosecutor, he's a Conservative MP, who we're not doing something right if this guy isn't Canada's next Justice Minister and Attorney General. Like, he's so good. He just was like, you know what? You guys don't get it. You don't think you did anything wrong. You want Canadians to believe that having an ISIS terrorist get Canadian citizenship and then plot the butchery of Toronto Jews from a hotel room is how the system's supposed to work. Anyways, let's show like a minute or so of this. He had it's a 5-minute clip, but he had enough. Let's go.
With refuting what I believe to be a false narrative at this committee. And I've listened very carefully to my Liberal colleagues. I've listened to some of the commentary from these witnesses. And I guess to a Canadian observer who is not entirely familiar with the circumstances that surrounded the creation of this particular meeting, one would think that all is well in Canada, that everything is working as it's intended to work. The CSIS is working appropriately, that the CBSA is working appropriately, law enforcement's working appropriately, and the government is doing its job. Well, that can't be furthest from the truth. The number one responsibility of Justin Trudeau and his government, number one responsibility of the CBSA and CSIS, is to keep Canadians safe. Not some of the time, all of the time. And what has happened here is we were within a hair's breadth, minutes, hours, potentially days away of a mass casualty on the Toronto Jewish community. So clearly this wasn't hatched overnight by the two accused. They were probably planning for days, weeks, months, all under the radar of CSIS, all under the radar of immigration, all under the radar of CBSA, all under the radar of our law enforcement. So I've got one phrase to say to this committee, to this committee and to Canadians. Thank God for France. Thank God for French intelligence that gave CSIS the tip. This wasn't a national in France who was planning something against Canadians. This was an individual that we granted Canadian citizenship to that completely fell under the radar map until a tip went to CSIS. And then CSIS got the RCMP involved, and we stopped what could have been a significant mass casualty event. And I'm sorry to all the witnesses, you failed in your responsibilities to keep us safe. You didn't do your job. There, but the grace of God and good French intelligence, they are behind bars where they should be.
I think that's good.
Now, I listened very carefully to...
You ain't wrong.
Sheila, that was a tour de force by Mr. Brock. I agree. The idea of him being justice minister, that would be a slam dunk
I would
choice.
love that.
You dialed this back all the way to 2017 when the first red flags emerged. I'm going to dial it forward because at least this time, thanks to the French, apparently, we stopped these two Islamists from going on a bloodbath massacre. But now I'm going to dial it forward to this. Is there any Canadian who believes in decency and democracy and safety think that it is a great idea to issue at least 5,000 visas to Gazans? This was only a father and son team. You're talking about 5,000 people from a neck of the woods where about 80% support Hamas, even now. Does anyone think this is a good idea? Does anyone think that this is going to be fraught with risk, given that what we're hearing about these two? That's where I stand on this, Sheila. That's why this government, they won't, but they have to rethink that gross strategy.
Yeah, the dad came here on a visitor's visa and then claimed asylum at Toronto's Pearson Airport once he got here. And he was, the rumors are, and they were trying to get to the bottom of it, but nobody wants to give any answers now, including Dominic LeBlanc, who was absolutely insufferable at committee. The rumors are that this guy came here on the Syrian refugee program. That's the one that Justin Trudeau said, don't worry, Canadians, I can keep you safe. That wasn't the case, was it? And as he came here and once he got permanent residency, he could start bringing over the rest of his two-man terror cell. So it was him and his son. So this is just going to get worse. It's absolutely just going to get worse.
And by the way, Shell, I'm just looking at our Rebel News story and the other monitor, the headline being Canadians split over Fed's plan to take in 5,000 Gazans.
Are we?
After ISIS terrorists given citizenship. Here's the deal, Sheila. When I think of split, that means 50-50. Although technically split could mean 95-5, which I hope is the case here. Surely there's not 50% of Canadians that go, yeah, that's a good idea, boss. Let them in. That's unbelievable. What is the exact number?
I don't know. But I bet if you told Canadians, they wouldn't be so split if you said, oh, by the way, 3/4 of these people think it's 64% of respondents raised concerns about the screening process and protocols, including 53% of Liberal voters. Ooh, I hope the Liberals never stop then. But if you told people, if you asked them this question, like, are you concerned about Gazans coming to Canada? You might get 64% of people saying, yeah, I'm not so sure, especially given what we're seeing with this new Toronto ISIS guy. But if you told them, now what if I told you 3/4 of the Gazans actually support what Hamas did during October 7th? I think that number you would see jump from 60% to like 90%.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would hope.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. And the other 10%, you can take the Gazans into your house. Let's get to the chats and then we'll wrap up because I know the Efron
Yes.
has been tethered to the TriCaster and he's got other things to do. Ryerson Gary gives us $5 and says, when you were a kid, the secret to getting something was showing dad how to have an original idea. You know, I do this with Ezra sometimes. I'm kidding. Trudeau twists that and waits for Poilievre to give him, Justin Trudeau, an original idea. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, Trudeau, it's just shameless. He sees that Canadians are flocking to the Conservatives, and instead of saying, why are Canadians doing that? He goes, you know what, I'll just take that idea. Thank you very much. And thinks that Canadians are stupid enough not to see it.
Well, Sheila, as we discussed earlier, this business of tariffs on China, one of his preferred nations, as we know.
It's favorite dictatorship.
Yeah. In terms of getting things done. Getting what done? Oh, like shutting down personal liberties and freedoms? Yeah. Okay. I think we understand that now.
Intimidating protesters with tanks?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's something that they wanted to do during the Freedom Convoy.
But he plagiarized Poilievre's plan that we witnessed him announcing in Hamilton earlier this month. 100% tariff on Chinese made EV cars, 25% tariff on steel and other minerals, but missing, and I can't remember what the number was, it was either 25% or 50% in the Poilievre plan, but it's absent in the Trudeau plan, is a substantial tariff on Chinese-made EV batteries. And I find that absolutely inexplicable, Sheila, because those plants, the tens of billions of dollars we're pouring dough into, taxpayer welfare, are for EV batteries. Shouldn't that be right up there as 100% tariff on like a Chinese EV car? And by the way, who in their right mind would want to buy a made in China vehicle? I know they're getting better, but you know the safety standards aren't there. You know their commitment to human rights, labor rights, what have you, are not there. Yeah, that's a bit of a no sale for me. But as I understand it right now, if you are Chinese manufacturers actually qualify for a Canadian government rebate in the neighborhood of $5,000. So,
well, I was going to say, guess who controls the supply chain for materials to make those batteries?
Yes.
So a lot of the cobalt mines wherein little children are slaving away in toxic environments so that fancy, rich environmentalists can have their novelty cars. A lot of the supply chain is controlled by China. So those are China-controlled mines in Africa. And so Trudeau is trying to have a little, Trudeau is trying to balance that. So if these heavily subsidized, although many of them now being canceled or shelved, Canadian electric vehicle battery plants want access to the materials to make those batteries, he can't tariff Chinese batteries.
Yeah. And you know, I got to tell you, Sheila, not all EV owners, but there's a certain percentage of them. Oh, the smugness. And there's one guy in Toronto. I always think of you when I see this. It's a white Tesla and it has a vanity plate that reads RIP oil, right? And I'm thinking, how do you think they manufactured that?
You know, I've been in a Tesla a few times in Ubers. And I've been entirely unimpressed with them. Yeah, I think the technology is sort of cool.
Yeah.
But you get in and it's like, oh, this feels like a Toyota Echo. When you get in, you're like, oh, the seat's hard. The door sounds sort of tin canny when you slam it. Very plastic, I guess, because it has to be light because the batteries are so heavy. Yeah. But I expected, I don't know what I expected, but it was like a gussied up Toyota Echo. That's what I felt like I was in.
And that's not a good thing, folks.
No. I had one as a rental one time. Okay. Annalisa, 1964. Oh, here we go. $20. Oh my, who do I see on the show? My sweetums. Cutie Pie Menzies. Sheila, you are beautiful as always. I have missed you all. Oh, Annalisa, I missed you too.
Oh, Annalisa, you don't have to give Sheila charity. Let's keep it focused on how much you love me. Sheila's got thick skin. She won't mind that. But thank you so much, Annalisa. You always put a smile on my face, and thank you for your donation too. And
Yeah,
one
I
day
appreciate
I
that.
have to meet you, okay?
I bet you do. Okay, let's keep going. Ryerson Gary gives us $5, and we're talking about the smokes. Sorry, David, the difference between government-run organized crime and private enterprise organized crime, you ask? About $100 a carton.
That's a great one. And it's still Ryerson Gary, right? Not TMU Gary, I hope.
Yeah, Ryerson Gary. All right, I think that's it. We're way over. Apologies to Efron and everybody who works behind the scenes at Rebel News for us going long.
But it was all gold. And even if it wasn't, what do you want? Your money back? Free content. Folks, thank you so much. Enjoy the unofficial last weekend of summer. I know it runs really till September 21st or something like that, but really the Labor Day weekend, or in Sheila Gunn Reid's province, the
Alberta
what
Day.
weekend?
Alberta Day weekend.
One of Jason Kenney's positive moves. Oh, I wish I was there for that debate. I could imagine.
There was no debate. He just did it.
But in any event, Sheila and I will be back. By the way, we are off on Monday, Labor Day,
Yes.
or whatever.
Alberta Day.
Alberta Day in Alberta. Are we doing a live stream on Tuesday, Sheila?
I don't know.
We
Leave
are.
that to Efron.
Yep.
We are.
Efron just said
Okay.
yes. So we'll see you back on Tuesday when the real world somewhat resumes itself, when people come back from taking off summer. It must be nice. I don't think we've ever been busier, eh, Sheila? But in any event, go out there, enjoy this last beautiful weekend. And as always, stay safe and stay sane.